Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. We actually have four feathers today that we can actually claim here. I am with my habitual co-hosts, Mr. Tony Marchese and Mr. Steve Kwiatkowski. I am Ron Luce, and we are joined by none other, Mr. Anthony Donati. You probably know him better as the Prospect Don, joining us here tonight. Anthony, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us, man. We're super excited about this episode.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on this podcast. Big fan, and I love talking hockey. Hawks hockey is my favorite thing in the world.
And for reference, for everybody watching along with us now or listening to this, we've had about an hour conversation prior to hitting live, so that's when you know it's a night full of talking Hawks, and we're really excited to get into it. Tony, Steve, gentlemen, how are you guys doing this evening?
I'm doing good. It's heating up over here in California. I think I say that like every single episode. That's because it hasn't hit 115 yet, but it's getting there. But I'm doing pretty good. It's Wednesday. I'm sipping on some bourbon, and I can't complain. How are you guys doing?
It's still cold here, Steve. I'm kind of jealous that you're like, every time we're talking, you're like, it's getting warmer. Everybody here is like, it's still in the fucking 50s, 60s every day. So enjoy your warm weather out there in California. I'm doing well. I had a great morning. I got to get on a season ticket holder Zoom call and meet Jeff Blashill this morning. That was a great meet and greet. Great way to start the day with some Blackhawks hockey thoughts. And now we're going to talk some draft prospects with the prospect on. We've got two Anthonys in the house, and as you know, you can never have enough Anthonys on a live stream. So I'm excited, Anthony. Glad you're here. Ron, I'll turn it back over to you. You can steer this conversation because I know you two are going to get along just based on the fact of the hour-long conversation that took place before the pre-show. I'm going to keep enjoying my beer, and we'll get into some Hawks talk.
Most definitely. Yes, Anthony and I, the prospect down and I have become best friends. I'm staking that claim right now. An incredible conversation ahead, just given what we've already, and we've kind of just touched the surface, especially on the prospect stuff. So very excited to dive into it. But Anthony, I think where we can start with this, and so I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain on, is you are press credentialed and will be attending the NHL Combine, which is right around the corner. June 1st is when it kicks off in Buffalo, New York. An awesome event. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of other Chicago Blackhawks beat writers there because it's an important draft with having the third overall pick. In addition to that, obviously, a ton of prospects, some who you've already had conversations with in the past, some who you may not have. So I think starting there, kind of, what's your anticipation level? What are you looking forward to most? And are there any players that you have kind of on your list of like, I really want to see X guy because of X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. So I'm very excited for the Combine. It's absolutely incredible that someone allowed me to get press credentials for it. I'm going to bring my camera, my GoPro. I'm going to be recording everything. They told me I could. I talked to Ben Pope, legendary Blackhawks just writer today for the Chicago Sun-Times. That was freaking awesome. He gave me everything.
Didn't he top our Four Feathers podcast beat writer power rankings at least once, Ron?
I think he has.
I believe he has.
Yeah, Ben.
We do a
That's pretty sweet.
Beat writer power rankings from time to time on the Four Feathers pod account. Ben Pope's he's a legend.
He's the man.
He's a legend.
Yeah, he's definitely the legend. He talked to me about the schedule. What's going to happen Friday and Saturday is going to be a lot of player work. I'm going to see the entire workouts. I'm hoping to see Matthew Schaefer, see how he does. Michael Misa, obviously, but the two players that I'm really excited to see are, I'm going to say, the Blackhawks targets. So I don't know if I should share that yet, but there are two players that I would actually like to see. Victor Eklund, I want to see if he's bigger than 5'11" and 161 pounds, because he plays like he's 6 foot and not 160 pounds, because that is not a developed person if you're 160 pounds playing the way he does. And I would also like to see Roger McQueen, because 6'5", right-handed center with that back injury. People are saying that it's not a herniated disc, which is kind of concerning because a herniated disc was what Caden Lindstrom had, and he was out for the year. So I would like to hear more information on that. But for the Blackhawks, I think Caleb Desnoyers, I'm going to talk to, best personality. Obviously, he's in the Mem Cup, so who knows if he'll even make it? I have no idea, honestly. But I would like to see him, and I'd like to see Anton Frondell, because I think Anton Frondell would be someone that we are probably going to draft or is in the conversation.
Most definitely. I think that's incredible, first off, that you'll get to attend. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the content you put out, and that's just going to be the shameless plug moment here, that if people aren't
keep going
following you, they should follow you at the Prospect on X is the best place to find you. Find all your content there. They'll be able to follow along during the combine. That's where I'll be following along, is with you and Mr. Ben Pope. But I think that's kind of something that I'm curious too, because you mentioned guys like Eklund and how small he's listed. 160 pounds is legitimately concerning. But when you say, well, he doesn't play like it, seeing that development, and maybe there was development this year, right? I think that's the beauty of the combine. It's so hard during the season, right? Like you see in other sports, the NFL and guys in college football, like they're on such a large stage at all times. You can kind of get a feel for how big they are, how strong they are, and all of that, right? Like the combine's great because you get the exact numbers, but you got a good feel for where guys are at. NBA, you could argue the same thing, especially guys coming from, the NCAA level, maybe not so much guys coming from the G League. And then you could even say the same, to an extent about baseball, right? I think college baseball's taking off at an all-time high. Maybe some of the high school guys you don't see as much. But it really feels like hockey is the one sport where even these guys that are at the NCAA level, until they get to the tournament, or if they're, on the Big Ten network for those that live in the Chicagoland area and in that kind of geographical location, you don't really get to see a lot of these guys. It really is just YouTube highlights, and maybe you stumble across a game, or maybe you're a hardcore and you sign up for, through the CHL to get all the OHL and the Q games and the W games. But unless you're doing that, it's really hard to see these guys. So I feel like the NHL Combine should get more respect almost, because it is a legitimate shot to see these guys and really see just the explosiveness and some of the things that maybe you don't necessarily see on camera that will translate to the ice come, whether it's next year for some of the top guys or maybe 2 to 3 years down the road for some of these later guys in the draft.
Yeah, the Combine is a very important day. Obviously, there are some drills that aren't as important as others, but I think overall it's just about the interviews and then what comes out of it, the rumblings. We hear so much about it. The NHL draft, and we're the third pick, and we kind of know what the first 2 picks are going to happen. I think the Blackhawks, there's going to be some things that drop or hint. We're seeing that Anton Frondell's FanDuel odds have gone from plus 1,600 when they released to now he's the favorite. Not saying anything towards that. Byron Murphy was the favorite in that 2023 draft, but for the Bears. But then we went Romo Dunze, so it didn't really matter. Or 2025 draft, sorry. And 2024. But obviously odds don't matter. But it's going to be solidified. What are the Islanders going to do? I think it's going to be a very telltale sign to see if they are actually interested in James Haggins. There seems to be a little movement there. Actually, I got a text today from somebody that I cannot say that said that the Islanders actually might go for Michael Misa. No one has even said that, but they actually might, based on the new GM. It was based on that. And obviously that, who knows? And that was just a text from somebody that was a friend to a friend, but that was something that kind of made my eyes open, because I don't want the Sharks to get Schaefer. Obviously, I've talked to Schaefer. He's an incredible person. I think that he's going to be an incredible defender. I think he's a superstar. So there's just a lot that comes with the Combine. I'm so happy that I'm going to be going. There's going to be a lot of agents, GMs, probably Kyle Davidson's going to be there. So it's just going to be an opportunity for the prospect donors to just get bigger. But I think that it's just a cool opportunity to go to see these guys work out and see what they bench press, because the bench press doesn't matter, but I just want to see it.
Most definitely, especially because that's the thing that doesn't translate, right?
Yeah, I just want to see it. I think it's going to be Brady Martin. If I had to guess who's going to bench press the most, it's going to be Brady Martin.
So that's interesting that you're saying that there is a chance that the Islanders could take Misa, because one, that's like kind of my fear. My hope is obviously, Misa somehow doesn't get picked at 2, which I've seen some people saying that. I don't know what your thoughts on that are. So like I was gonna ask you before we kind of get into realistic picks for the Blackhawks, like, do you think there's a chance that Misa drops? Because now that you're saying that, like, it's possible the Islanders could take him at 1, now I'm like, oh shit, like that my dreams might be crushed.
I think that Misa goes to 3.
Anthony, please don't crush Steve's dreams.
I think Misa goes to 3 if Haggins goes to 1 at 1. I think that's just how it goes. I don't think the Islanders should pick Haggins at 1, but he's the hometown kid. A lot of teams have said that he could be their best forward. He was the number 1 pick for 4 or 5 months. He had a great NCAA season. People are kind of crapping on it because he had 37 points in 37 games. Dude, the NCAA is a league where you're playing 22, 25-year-old men. I did a collab with the GOAT podcast today, GOAT Radio, and they were talking about how one of the co-hosts was actually a 25-year-old NCAA hockey player. So it's more on the West Coast, so not a lot of Chicago fans know that podcast. But the thing is, it's like that just means that you're playing against grown men. Porter Martone is probably, breaking news. It's not really breaking news, but he has a huge NIL offer to go to Penn State. He's trying to make the jump from the OHL to the NCAA. So the NCAA is just another step for these prospects. You're going to practice 4 times a week. That's just going to help a player like Porter Martone. It helped a player like James Haggins. But the thing is, think about if you're playing any sport, you're only playing 2 games a week, maybe 3. And the thing is, you're kind of not as hot as you want to be. Those 2 games are so important. If you're playing the OHL, you're going to play 5-6 games a week sometimes. Not really 6, but like 4 or 5 games a week. You're going to be able to get hot. It's just going to click. Sometimes these athletes pick the wrong league in their draft season. I think Logan Hensler did with going to Wisconsin. He went from top 5 to probably top 20, maybe 25. I think James Haggins might have picked the wrong league too, because he would have been a solidified number 1 pick if he would have went to a lower league that wasn't a plan against 22, 25-year-olds. He's 5'11". But look, if we're talking about 5'11" players, why are the Blackhawks connected to Isaac Howard and Marco Rossi? Because Marco Rossi's 5'9". So the Blackhawks are obviously, they don't give a crap about how tall a player is. If they're under 6 feet and they can play, they're interested. So I think there's multiple players, and multiple players the Blackhawks could be interested in. The combine is going to be very important for that. Weigh-ins are very important. We saw Ivan Demidov last year, where he was supposed to be 5'11", and then I think he was over 6 foot. We all thought that we were going to take him because they went to dinner with Dan Middlestein. We actually did draft a Dan Middlestein player, but it ended up being Artem Levshunov. And, we solidified our defense, so there's no way we go defense. I saw Kayshawn Aitchison in the conversation at 3, but that doesn't make any sense. That was just a rumor, and that was just because of FanDuel put them at plus 450 to 1 odds, which is just stealing money. But I feel, or 45 to 1 odds. But I think that there's so much that comes during this time that we're actually going to hear things. We're going to hear what the Islanders are going to do. We're going to hear what the Sharks are going to do. The Sharks obviously want Schaefer. I could see a 3-team trade. I don't believe that the Islanders are set right now. They just have their GM and they barely have any of their staff. So things can change. But we just got Blashill and he understands patience. We could take a player and then not play him this year. So I just think that we need to, there's a lot that's going to happen in the next couple of years. And I don't, this draft pick's important, but it's going to be what the Blackhawks do with their next 12 picks in the first 2 rounds in the next 3 years. Like, that's an absurd amount of picks. So yeah, I think the Islanders might go for a James Haggins, but they would have to trade down with the Blackhawks and maybe get some of those picks.
That was an excellent long answer there, Anthony. And it brought up so many different questions, but I'm not so much of the guy that's going to get into the prospect weeds as much as Ron or you. But I think it's really interesting. On the last show, I had said, I didn't like the fact that Kyle Davidson wound up 2 here, or wound up 3. I wanted to get at least 2 because I feel like at least Schaefer's got to go 1-2, and then there's a little bit of a question mark, and you brought it up throughout your last answer. Does Misa fall? And this is the same question that Steve sort of asked, but like outside of Misa and Schaefer, I think it's really difficult for Kyle Davidson to evaluate across the board all of these guys. What do you personally think? I mean, you've talked to some of these guys already. Do you think that your answer there, where it doesn't really matter about this pick, would have changed if they wound up at number 2? Because I think it would be more solidified. Do you agree with that? In terms of draft strategy with their first pick.
To answer your question, I believe that if we were 2, we would have taken Misa for sure, because the Sharks probably would have taken Schaefer. But I actually think that from a content standpoint and a me standpoint, having the 3rd pick is the greatest, because no one would invite me to these podcasts. There's nothing to talk about. It's just Misa. It's just Misa. Misa's the player that we should have probably tanked harder, like 4. I mean, look at where our franchise, 1 pick is kind of incredible, because look at where our franchise would have been if we would have had Celebrini. We would have just had 5 more losses. You get Celebrini with Connor Bedard, the league looks at you differently. You get the 2nd pick, you take Misa, you let the Sharks take Schaefer. You have a Jonathan Toews-esque player right there. When you look at interviews with Michael Misa, that guy is stiff. He's strict. He's one of those guys that's not going to make a move. He's just hockey. Zero personality, and not like personality in a bad thing. He's just, that dude's a future leader. His eyes is on the prize right there. When you look at a guy like Caleb Desnoyers, which is probably in our range, there's a huge gap between Michael Misa and Desnoyers. Not like, it's not anything on Desnoyers. It's just 2 different kind of prospects. I think you're looking at a guy that was a solidified top line player, and then Desnoyers could be a 3rd line player if he doesn't really work out. And I think that he's either a superstar version of Jason Dickinson or a Jason Dickinson, in my opinion, with a little bit higher upside or offensive upside. There's just 2 kind of different prospects you're getting here. Now, I kind of want the Blackhawks to be a little bad again, get a little lottery luck, and get Gavin McKenna. I did a tweet today that said, would you rather the 1st and 2nd picks in this class, which is Schaefer and Misa, or McKenna? Everyone said McKenna. That's how crazy next year's class is with McKenna. It's not that this class is bad, but I don't want us trading first picks in 2026, unprotected firsts, just to try to move up to get Misa. I don't think Misa's that much better, but the thing is, there's not really a good top line player at the 3rd pick, like solidified. So you're going to have to guess, unless you get Martone, but obviously Chicago, there's a reason why we might not want him. I compare him to like an old timey car. You gotta rev up the engine a little bit, and it's going to take a little while to get going, but it's going to get you to point A to point B with his skating. His power strides are tough. His first 3 strides need work. Going to the NCAA, where he's getting 4 days of practice, is going to help him. So you need to just say, hey, we're going to work on his skating. He's 18 years old. Yeah, he's a little older than the other prospects, but this guy's going to be able to get better skating with Oliver Moore and Frank Nazar. It doesn't really matter. So just take him. He's the only one, in my opinion, other than James Haggins, that has that all-star superstar potential. Obviously, people are saying Desnoyers might be a Jonathan Toews-esque player too, but what is he doing in the Mem Cup? He's doing nothing. Not against Desnoyers. I think he's a great player, but he's not showing anything that says 3rd overall pick. So if you take him, you're just taking a prayer. It means a lot when you don't have that 2nd overall pick, Tony. And I love your name. It's the best name in the chat, but I just feel
Thank you.
It's so hard to get the 3rd pick in this class because there's no 3rd ranked best player. And there is a top 4, but we're not picking one of the top 4 in any projections.
Yeah, this is what I felt was going to be sort of the problem here with this draft is outside of 1 and 2, there's a drop off. And for another tanking season, and I look at the fan perspective to this, because you're coming off of a season where most people are pretty upset that, you know, you finish the year, you don't have a head coach. It's Anders Sorensen. It's another tank year. You wind up now with the number 3 pick. Unless Misa falls, you're probably not seeing that sort of aggressive movement forward that you got at the end of the season last year. So you need to have forward momentum. I think that places, not to take this away from draft talk, that's the topic of the episode. That's going to place a lot of importance on offseason acquisitions for Kyle Davidson and just the timeline of the rebuild. And then, it starts to slip into your mind as a Blackhawks fan. What's the most important thing? And that's getting to the finish line. There's patience that's involved in that. But as I said on the last episode as well, I don't think Jeff Blashill gets the same amount of leeway as a Luke Richardson did. I don't think he gets that, grace period as much, given the statements that were made by Kyle Davidson last year that they were going to take a step forward in this rebuild. You started to amass some talent at the NHL level, or at least the AHL level. So you want an impact player that's going to come in here, whether it be an offseason acquisition through free agency, trade, or a bona fide draft pick. And he's going to get judged on this one. So I don't think this is an enviable position for Kyle Davidson to be in. In fact, I think going third really makes that risk reward here something that Kyle Davidson's GM tenure is going to largely get based on, potentially in 3-4 seasons, because you could look back and say, well, he butchered that draft.
Yeah.
We haven't taken that next step forward. Why didn't he go with X player? So I think this is probably the most high pressure draft pick that Kyle Davidson's had so far in his GM tenure. And the slide off from what at least you're telling me is pretty significantly steep. So that's where I'm sitting uneasy as a Blackhawks fan before this draft, a lot more than had we've, that card get flipped over for 1 or 2, or at least this year, the lotto balls, pop up in the right favor.
And I don't think that this class is that big of a drop off from 2 to 3, but it's the players that we're talking about. Like James Haggins is considerably a better prospect than Caleb Desnoyers just based on value, or Anton Frendel. I would have rather had the 6th pick and just see who fell to us, or 5th pick. Like having the 3rd pick and then talking about guys that were ranked 12 in the beginning of the year and hadn't really done anything to jump up 3 spots, or Frondell, who had 3 straight injuries to start out the gate, was ranked 18th on Elite Prospects rankings in December and January, and then they bumped him up 6 spots to 12. So everyone was like, "Oh, Anton Frendel went up 6 spots. He's now 12." I'm just saying, like, I've watched a lot of Anton Frendel. Victor Eklund was driving that line. Obviously, Victor Eklund is a really good player, but he's 160 pounds, like we've talked about, and he was playing with men in the SHL. If you're not driving that line and you're having him do all the work, that says something. Obviously, Anton Frendel is probably a top 8 pick. Like, he's a top 8 prospect in this class, but I don't think he's a top 3 prospect. And obviously, he can hit. He has one of the best shots and great backhand and a great slap shot. A heavy slap shot in the draft, maybe the hardest out of any forward. But the thing is, like, James Haggins is 5'11", but he has superstar playmaking ability. And if you have him on a line with Frank Nazar and maybe a Marek Vanacker or someone's like bigger that brings a little bit of the punch, like even an off-season acquisition or a trade, you do that. You get Porter Martone to play with Connor Bedard because you didn't take Ivan Demidov. We're looking at the wrong players, and I think that's what's fearful for Blackhawks fans, because there is a lot of great players in the top 4. It's just we're looking at specifically Caleb Desnoyers and Anton Frendel, and they just have not showed me enough in their draft seasons to say, yeah, they are a top 3 pick, in my opinion. I'd rather trade back.
I think that's going back to a comment
Yes.
that you made earlier. I agree. I just don't think this is the draft where people are going to want to trade up, right? Like, I think it's there's a lot of parallels to the NFL draft this year, where it was all the values in picks 20 to 60, so nobody wants to trade it back because nobody's willing to trade up. Everybody's happy staying where they are. I think this draft might have some
What can you
comparison.
package with that? I hate to go tinfoil here, Ron, but maybe you can package something with that pick. Maybe you can
Maybe.
take an Ethan Del Mastro or a Wyatt Kaiser and throw them on that pick and make it a whole lot more attractive for someone.
I think trading
I'm just
Ethan Del
here.
Mastro is a painful mistake.
I do as well. But
Maybe not Ethan Del Mastro. But
Wyatt
because he
Kaiser,
solidifies
sure,
himself in the
but-
top six. Yeah. Or Nolan Allen, maybe even a Lucas Reichel to help him out. I was actually, like I said, on the GOAT Radio podcast, and I said this draft reminds me of the NFL draft because you have players from 10 to 40 in the NFL draft that was very slotted in the exact same location. In this draft, it's probably 16 or 17 where you have the exact same players from 16 to 40 that it's like at 25 we're going to get a really good player, and at 34 we're going to get a really good player. Our team's going to want those picks, and can we potentially go from 25 and 34 to maybe another 15, 14, 13 to get like a Carter Bear, Malcolm Spencer, someone like that. Maybe we don't take a Porter Martone, but we get 2 top 15 picks. I think that would be
here's an
interesting
interesting question for everybody. What if Misa falls to 3? Do you think that the trade interest in the number 3 overall pick goes through the roof?
we would take Misa if that was the
Yeah.
case.
I
That would
agree
help
with
out
that.
us more than anything. But if one of the things that would be more interesting is if the Islanders want to trade back to 3 to get Haggins, what would we have to give up for Haggins? And would it be a Korchinski and the 3rd pick because they want a left-handed defenseman? Would you give up Korchinski plus maybe 34 and the number 3 overall pick? Because that pick is going to be valuable, and Korchinski kind of lost a lot of value. So maybe we're valuing Korchinski as like a 14, 15 overall pick in this class. Is 14, 15 plus 3 worth the number 1 pick for the Islanders? It could honestly be. They lucked out. They were going to have 11 anyway.
Yeah, I think in this year's draft, I think you could make the argument that a middle first value in a guy like Korchinski could absolutely be enough to move up 2 picks. I don't think there's, like you said, I don't think there's that much of a drop off, especially if, because let's be real, if you're the San Jose Sharks, you're probably sitting there pretty knowing that the Hawks are going up to get Misa, not going up to get Schaefer.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense for them of like, okay, we're fine as long as the Islanders don't take Schaefer, then they get what they want ultimately at the end of the day. But Anthony, you said something earlier that I think is such a good point, though, that I kind of wanted to just come back to really quick in the sense of like the NCAA has taken such a large leap that I think for that reason, so many people are underselling James Haggins, because I watch him play and I go, this is a guy that's absolutely a playmaker. He does a lot of really good things on the ice. And sure, he was playing with really good players on his line at Boston College, but guess what? He's going to be doing that in the NHL too, especially if he's playing with a Frank Nazar, or maybe he's playing with a Connor Bedard. He's going to be playing with elite talent as well. Playing with a guy like Riley Leonard, it showed he can set guys up. And a point per game player at the collegiate level is fantastic. Like, I think for people that are, especially maybe Blackhawks fans, we'll dial this in a little bit more on the niche here of, oh, well, he was a point per game player and he's being considered as a top 5 pick. For reference, Oliver Moore was not a point per game player at the NCAA. So everybody that's super high on Oliver Moore and then poo-pooing James Haggins, that's not fair. Oliver Moore is also 2 years into college, right? He's done this for a little bit. James Haggins was a freshman putting up point per game numbers. I mean, not everybody's Jack Eichel and you walk into college hockey and you win the Hobie as a freshman. That's just not realistic. It very, very rarely happens. So I think, not underselling how much better NCAA hockey is now, even than it was when Eichel came out of the draft. I think there's a nauseating difference, especially now with what you said, right? Porter Martone is getting this big NIL deal to go to Penn State, because now that's an option for these really good junior players to leave and go to the NCAA. That's just going to continue to make the NCAA an even better league and probably one of the best development leagues in the world. Even, I would argue, even in comparison to the AHL. I think you're going to start to see the NCAA be considered like the little brother to the AHL in terms of talent, because there's going to be so much talent there. But I digress from that. I do want to ask, because we had a comment a little bit earlier. James Hagan is the answer. Stollett also asked, why wasn't Misa invited to play for Canada? I think that's an interesting question in itself. But what do you think? Well, I guess we'll make a 2-pronged question. why wasn't Misa invited to play for Canada in your eyes? But also, what do you think is the number one thing about James Hagens that people are kind of, I'll call it poo-pooing on him in the sense of like underselling him as a player? Is it the size? Is it because he played at BC and that's just an elite program? Who, if he was to go back to college for another year, he needs to play with Sasha Boisvert, who's going to transfer there because North Dakota decided to do something stupid and get rid of their coach. What say you, Anthony?
You asked a lot of great questions, and what you're talking about with the NCAA was fantastic. Just to go back to James Hagens' production a little bit, if you want to talk about a comp that I've had for James Hagens for a while, it actually was a player that played with Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, and that's a Will Smith. Will Smith is 6 feet. James Hagens is 5'11". There's not a lot of inches there. That's like impacts those two. And the thing is, I think that I like that comment, but I think that the thing is with James Hagens is that he is an incredible elite vision playmaking player. I think that he's like a Russell Westbrook, and Gabe Perreault was playing that point guard role. You get the guy the puck in his hands, he's going to be able to do things with it. When you look at James Hagens, 37 points in 37 games was really good. It's Adam Fantilli and Macklin Celebrini destroyed freshmen, in my opinion. You can't play like that. Those two players are hat-trick machines, and well, on Adam Fantilli's side, I think he has 3 hat-tricks already, but Connor Bedard has 0, and you have Macklin Celebrini, who might be one of the best 200-foot players in the entire league right now, center-wise, especially under 20. I talk to every single prospect. I ask, who's the best player under 23? They say Celebrini. It kills my heart, except the only one that said it was Connor Bedard was actually Porter Martone. So awesome there. But the thing is, like, James Hagens and the NCAA level, this league is already better than the Q, in my opinion, at developing. I think it's on par with the WHL now and the OHL. I think that when we talk about the NCAA, there's just so much money going into it, NIL aside. I was on the podcast today, and they said Gavin McKenna might get a $1 million NIL deal offer. We're getting $250,000 deals for Porter Martone, which is absolutely insane right now. I think it should be a lot more, but based on NHL contracts, just think about that. Gavin McKenna might be making more than a 4th liner next year. So
might be making more in a single year than the entry-level contract he could sign as the number 1 overall pick.
Yep. $925,000 for an entry-level contract, maybe $975 or $875. I think I played Shell, but I don't remember what it was. But
$975, I believe, is what the new max is for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the USHL is about to get the bag too from the NHL. They are keen on making USA Hockey have more money, and the player development is absolutely amazing. Muskegon Lumberjacks is one of the biggest USHL teams, and you just see the amount of funding they're getting. They have the most draft picks right now, so it's just like their USA Hockey is trending to be back. I think that a player like James Hagens is the face of that in this class. I think the Islanders are going to at least think about it for a very long time. But if they are going to take James Hagens, because I believe he is the answer for the Blackhawks, if we're not taking Porter Martone because of the skating. I totally understand if the skating is that bad in the eyes. I like that by breezing, he said James Hagens is the answer. I think he could also be the answer for many teams. I think that there's talk that he's the number 1 forward on a lot of teams' boards. You have a center that can play wing. You have Frank Nazar, who plays a very similar game to James Hagens, and he's a fan favorite, except I think that James Hagens is a better playmaker, in my opinion. And his draft season, if you watch the Worlds when Teddy Stigo won for USA, if you watch that overtime back, because I tweeted this out, James Hagens had the game-winning goal on his stick, but the goalie made a fantastic save. If that kid scores and lifts the puck a little more over the pad of the diving goalie, his draft class or his draft year is completely different. The NCAA is about to get an influx of money. I was a finance major. Ron just had incredible test for finance today. It was awesome. We understand money. This is a league that's about to get more money, get more eyes on it. It's going to be so much better for development. You're going to see better development plans, nutrition, getting guys meals, the facilities are going to be better. It's just overall money is better and it helps out. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's kind of a perfect segue, Steve. I think you've got something to share too. So I want to go ahead and let you share your thoughts as well. But as soon as Steve's done, I think this is a great segue into kind of some of the players we think could be selected at 3. But Steve, before we get there, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, no, just real quick. I just wanted to kind of comment on what you guys are talking about. Because I've said on the show before where people who think the AHL is like a solid developmental league, I've never really thought of the AHL as like an actual developmental league, maybe as like a stepping stone for players who need that pro experience. But I'm happy to see the way things are going with the NCAA and that program getting like way better. And you're saying, you see it getting better than the WHL. And I think it's like, I would maybe argue that they're kind of already there. They're for sure going to be getting there in the next year or two. But yeah, it's exciting stuff for the world of hockey. Like people who aren't really following like a lot of these younger teams, like college hockey is about to really take off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's Steve brings up a good point. I think the NCAA is kind of there, but if you're looking at goalie development, it's probably the WHL, OHL route because you're only playing 2 games a week with players that need more training. NCAA is where it's at. And the hype for the WHL, when you get a player that scores over 100 plus points, or in the OHL, it's going to be a lot higher than a player that's a point per game in the NCAA level. And maybe if James Hagen scored 50 and 37, he would have a lot of hype, but it's just 13 points. Honestly, he had a good season. He's playing with Gabe Perreault, and obviously it should have been a lot better. But Gabe Perreault also had a tough start with the Rangers. Obviously, I think they're going to destroy his career, not even because Gabe Perreault is a bad player, just because the Rangers do that. It's tough when you're 18 and one of the youngest players in the NCAA and you're playing against 22, 25-year-olds. It's just tough.
It really is. It's such a whirlwind when it's all said and done in terms of the talent level. And I agree. I think there's a world where we could be sitting here in 5 years and we could argue that maybe not necessarily for goaltending, but at least for maybe forwards. Even I think defensemen. I think we're seeing a lot of college defensemen really take that next step. I think there's a world where the NCAA maybe even bypasses the WHL and OHL, especially if that influx of money continues. But on the topic of what the Blackhawks could do at number 3, Anthony, you've already hinted at a handful of names: Anton Frondel, Porter Martone, Caleb Deswagnier, because I was totally ready to call him Denoise for like 3 weeks until I finally heard how his name was pronounced a little while ago. But I think now is kind of a fun time if maybe we can all kind of sit here and predict who we think the Blackhawks are going to take. Again, Anthony, we'll let you start because you've kind of already hinted at some of these names. So we'll let you go ahead and share your prediction first. Just kind of, again, revisiting some comments here. Still at Breezing saying James Hagens is the answer. Deswagnier for Beelzebub 1. A couple other names in here as well, more kind of featured toward the second round. So keeping it at the 3rd overall pick, Anthony, what do you let's make it a 2-pronged approach. What do you want the Blackhawks to do at 3, and who do you actually think they're going to take at 3?
So what I want the Blackhawks to do is probably take James Hagens, because James Hagens was my number 1 player on the board for a very long time. I like Porter Martone a lot, so I actually think Porter Martone might be the answer on Bedard's wing. I forgot to answer the question of why wasn't Misa invited to play for Canada, and that's honestly because Hockey Canada's didn't even have a tryout or anything. It was just names. They needed more scoring, and it was a complete farce that they did that. So it was they only played Porter Martone for 10 minutes a night, and he scored 1 goal in 3 games, even though he was probably one of the best players on that team. And then you had Matthew Schaefer, who played 1.5 games because of the collarbone injury for Team Canada, and he was the best defenseman on that team and probably best player, and he was the youngest player on that team. So that's kind of absolutely incredible. But who I want is one of those two, Hagens or Porter Martone. Obviously, Misa would be the number one player, but he's not going to be a viable option. And then who I think they're going to take is either Caleb Desnoyers or Anton Frundell.
Hell yeah. Steve, same question for you, sir.
All right. First of all, you are called the prospect Don for a reason. You are super knowledgeable on all the prospects. So kudos. I'm learning a lot. For me, I was kind of interested in Hagens at the start of the year, and he kind of fell in everybody's draft rankings, including mine. So I think I would want to see the Blackhawks pick Porter Martone. And I wrote about him last week, and I just like his skill set. I think he's a little bit more physical than Hagens. I think that's where Hagens is kind of lacking, is his physicality. So I kind of like what Martone brings to the table. I think best case scenario, there is a center there. But like you're saying, like you see him playing on Bedard's wing. And I think that's like a great option. And especially since you already have Nazar, is like he's kind of looking like your number 2 center. So like would have zero issues with Martone going to the wing. Especially if it's with Bedard. But I think Martone's going to be a great pick. I'm kind of interested to see with Frundell, because everything you're saying is like there's a lot of people who are very high on Frundell. I'm going to be trying to write something up on him later this week, but I don't know. Maybe at the end of the week that might change from Martone to Frundell. From what you're saying, I don't think it will, but yeah. So I think the Blackhawks, they should pick Martone, and I kind of think that's what's going to happen.
Okay. The mute bug got you, Anthony.
Well, I was going to say I hope so, but I didn't want to take Tony, the other Anthony, his opinions off. If you want me to say something about Steve's, I would just say, Porter Martone compared himself to Matthew to Chuck when he was on my interview. He said that the weaknesses that he needs to work on are his skating. He's working on it every day, and it's also physicality. So I feel like those are two things that he obviously needs to work on. NCAA is going to help him. You pick that guy. I think that you pick him. But since there is talk about Marco Rossi as well as Isaac Howard from multiple sources, you pick the guy that's the best 5'11" player, under 6 foot player in the entire availability of the offseason, and that is James Hagens. There's no one else better. So if we're looking at players already that are under 6 foot, you take James Hagens.
Definitely.
So
Tony,
sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Because I've been focusing a lot on like the playoffs. And something I've been seeing from like elite prospects is like Martone has kind of gotten praise for his skating. So I mean, he said it himself that that's something he needs to work on. And just to be clear, that's something you think is a weakness of his, because like Kyle Davidson is historically gone for like the best skaters in the draft and the fastest skaters. So you think that's a weakness? You would kind of agree with what Porter is saying about himself?
Consensusly across the board, Porter Martone is not the greatest skater in this class. He might be one of the worst in the whole top 10. It's not because of his top speed. It's not because of his average speed or when he's getting going. It's his first 3 strides. He can lose his defender as soon as he gets into transition. It is awful, but one of the worst transition players in this entire class is Anton Frundell. But once he gets away from the Swedish Hockey League, which the ice is a lot bigger, and comes to the American rink where it's a lot smaller, his transition game is going to be better. So they basically have similar weaknesses, but the thing is, it's just the first 3 strides. It's not NHL level at all. I think that you can tell about his skating just by watching some of the highlights and the clips. It's just not the best. He's not a Colin Potter, who's the best player, who's the best skater in the entire class that plays at ASU. He's not anywhere close to an Oliver Moore, but if you get him on a line with Oliver Moore one day, even if it's like worst case scenario of Porter Martone, it's going to work well. I think that skating is probably one of the best things that a player like Oliver Moore could do for your team. So if you pair him up with that guy, he can help alleviate that weakness for him. But yeah, I think that's a huge weakness in Porter Martone's game.
Thanks for clarifying.
So this is more of a question for you, Anthony. What I'm gathering so far through this episode, and this is what I thought beforehand, but from what you're sort of reassuring me on, is really depends on what the Islanders do at number 1 and what the Hawks are going to do at number 3.
Mm-hmm.
If they go Hagens, there's a likelihood that Michael Meese is there, and Hawks fans are going to be happy. If they decide to take Misa at 1, this is a crapshoot.
Yeah. 100%.
So I can't answer that question until I know what the Islanders are going to do. What are the Hawks going to do? I think the answer is it depends on New York. And
yeah,
that's what makes this fun, right? That's what makes this conversation fun. So I don't know if I'm answering a prediction or what I think is going to happen here.
I think you're taking the logical approach, which is making it less fun, Tony, if you want my honest opinion.
No, I think it's more fun to sit here and go.
Well, I think the question becomes though,
with this question.
Sure, and that's exactly where I was going to say. I was going to say, obviously, if Misa falls, Misa's probably the pick. I think everybody can feel consensus of that. But
so
it's
the real question
what
is,
happens when they go 1-2.
That's what I'm saying. The real question here for everybody is what happens if New York takes Michael Misa at number 1. And I would agree with Steve that I want Porter Martone. Then that's just, it might be recency bias. It might have been a couple of Budweisers watching Porter Martone highlights and saying, fuck yeah, that's my guy. So, I like that option for all of the reasons. You guys got into the skating question, Steve. I thought that was an excellent question. But as I've listened to this develop throughout the day, the James Hagens question is real.
Yeah, I think no matter what is going to happen for the first 2 picks, it's going to be Schaefer and Misa in any order. So the draft starts at 3, and if it's not those guys, then the discussion is really easy. I think if there's a Shane Wright situation, Shane Wright's not falling to 4. He'd be falling to 3 in this draft because the Blackhawks are going to take one of those 2 guys. I think that the problem is with what the Blackhawks are doing, like I had said before, is we're not looking at the traditional top 4 guys that were always in this class, which was Hagens and Porter Martone, because both of them have weaknesses that don't check off our boards. We're looking more for Anton Frondel and Caleb Desnoyers. And there's a real chance that one of those 2 guys is going to be the pick, and then Blackhawks fans are going to be very upset. There's also a chance that a dark horse like Jake O'Brien from Brantford, who set up Nick Lardis to get 72 goals, is the 3rd overall pick. It's going to be one of those weird picks for number 3 that the entire fan base is going to argue about. I don't think there's going to be a win here. I think there's going to be a group of people that are very upset. I think Porter Martone might be the fan pick right now. I think that there's going to be talk. If James Hagens is over 6 feet, he's the pick. If he weighs in and he's around he's 176 right now. If he weighs in around 190, he's 6 feet. I think he's going to be the pick. We didn't know what Ivan Demidov was, and he was 6 feet. So obviously that could be something. If Porter Martone is 6'4" and 210, 215, I think he could also be the pick too. The weigh-ins are very important in this. And I don't think that the Blackhawks have even made their decision. I think that it's just a group of players, but they always knew they were going to be in this position. Remember during the 2023 draft when Kyle Davidson said we were thinking that we were going to get the 4th or 5th pick. So that's what we were banking on all season because we had the 3rd odds. So he already has probably made up his mind and who he wants in a batch of players, maybe 2, maybe 3. But I think that it's between Hagens, Porter Martone, Frondel, and Desnoyers, and I don't think that there's one that's completely the right pick. I just think that Frondel and Desnoyers might not be the best value for our team.
Here's another follow-up to that. Which pick makes Blackhawks fans the most upset online? Like, what will burn the world down from what you're seeing?
O'Brien. If we take O'Brien, I'm gonna be upset too. Just because like I've heard O'Brien a couple times, and the Blackhawks are interested in him. He is not a number 3 overall pick. That is a Beckett Seneca draft. Um, he is somebody that has incredible playmaking ability, has really good vision. But you take O'Brien, if you trade down to 9, you get JJ Paterka, you give them 3, you know, Lucas Reichel, even like Nolan Allen, give them a couple picks, and then you take JJ Paterka and 9, and maybe something else, and then you go take Jake O'Brien or trade up for him. You do not take that guy at 3. I also think that if Desnoyers doesn't do anything in the Memorial Cup and he's just as bad as he has been, and we take him 3rd, there would really be no reason for him to go 3rd. He hasn't done one thing that has showed me like he's the 3rd overall pick, but the thing is, Desnoyers has a lot of upside. He was one of the best players in the queue, but he wasn't the best shooter in the queue. That was Justin Carbonneau. I think that it's just so hard to take Desnoyers over Frondell and Hagens based on how much I wanted a top 4 pick, because I was doing write-ups in the summer on Desnoyers being the 11th, 12th best player. So it's just, there's no value. I like value, and I'm a fantasy football drafter. I'm an avid player in fantasy football. You always go for the guy that's valued in your round.
You and Ron are like
best friends. I told you.
We got to watch the game together next season for sure. I'd come down there. Yeah.
Deal. Absolutely.
We'll live stream.
Come down. Tell you, we'll do a live stream.
I'll tell you what. Stokes said it perfectly here. You know, it's such a weird draft year for the Blackhawks because I look at them sitting at 3. I'm very much in your camp, Anthony. After doing enough watching and what I feel about guys and things like that, Hagens would be my pick as well. I agree with you. I think if he's 6 foot, it's a slam dunk. I think you'd be stupid not to. But even at 5'11", what he does, I think he fits in well with what the Blackhawks want to do in the long term. But then you could also make the same argument about some of these other guys. Like I look at Porter Martone. So the comparison I have for Porter Martone when I watched him was, to me, he's Tage Thompson without the shot.
Ooh, all right.
Like he's a big player. He's not necessarily the greatest skater. Thompson's probably a better skater than Martone is at this point, obviously coming out of the draft. But even Thompson, I remember coming out of the draft, was not heralded for his skating. I mean, he fell to the 20s, the St. Louis Blues. But that big body, but he's not necessarily physical, but he's heavy. He plays that heavy game. You know, but Martone's probably a better passer, whereas Thompson's more of a shooter. But to me, when I watch them, like I see Tage Thompson, the finesse passing version in Porter Martone. Like that's the player that I see, which to me could be great for a player like Connor Bedard, who was a sniper and a shooter in his, junior days and really hasn't had the opportunity to do that because the play has driven through him rather than allowing him at times to be kind of that offset option as a shooter. And then I think I see where everybody gets excited about Desnoyers because I see that part of the game too that's there. But I agree with you. I think there's something to be kind of desired yet that isn't quite available in his game. He's probably a middle 6 center at best. And you don't want to take that with your 3rd overall pick. Now, granted, those guys sometimes can develop later in life, like Dylan Strome did with the Washington Capitals and become that true top 6 center that you thought you had. But hopefully he doesn't have to go through, the recycling of the Coyotes and the Blackhawks and Stan Bowman making trades for that year's draft class in order to get where he needed to be. I also think the pick is Frondell. So that was my tinfoil hat take from our last show was I think the pick is Anton Frondell. And the maybe the tip, I guess, that made me lean that way was the Marcus Kruger comments on Frondell. And that Marcus Kruger connection was immediately like, oh, of course they're tapping into that. Because I think a lot of people forget, like, yeah, Kyle Davidson's his own GM and he's his own, person and he's going to make his own decisions.
We've got a hot comment that just came in here.
We do have a hot comment that just came in here from Stolet. Porter Martone reminds him of Corey Perry.
I was
That is
just
a
about
very
to say
hot
something
comment.
about that. On NHL, sorry to interrupt, but real quick, NHL.com, they have his comp as Corey Perry. So
I could see that.
Yeah,
I really could. I could definitely see a lot of Corey Perry in his game when it's all said and done. But I think the thing with the Frondell comp or the link, right, with the Kruger thing, I think a lot of people forget that Davidson was here since 2013. He's been in Chicago for a long time. He's seen all these guys.
He drove Tavo.
He drove
Carolina
Tavo from the airport, right?
From the airport.
So, like he doesn't forget what those teams were like. He knows what Marcus Kruger's opinion means to the Blackhawks. And that's where I could see the whole Frondell thing happening. That being said, though, I really do. I think, and maybe I'm in the minority here because I agree. I think 3 is a weird spot in this draft. But I think it's also kind
Ron,
of
I've got to stop you. Marcus Kruger was a 5th-round draft pick. Jonathan Taves, wasn't he? Number 3 overall. There's expectation in Chicago that's set with a number 3 overall draft pick. It has to be a home run, especially with this timeline. That's where I feel like you're not going to get people are going to base.
But Tony, the last time the Blackhawks had the number 3 overall pick, they took Kirby Dach.
I know.
Upside
look
play.
What that did.
They misdeveloped him, if you want my honest opinion.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there.
But same with Korchinski.
They misdeveloped the guy that still has issues.
Yeah, well, he's been hurt because they rushed him back because they needed somebody to play next to Patrick Kane.
He also never filled out into that frame of a bodybuilder that everybody said was going to happen. Wait till Kirby Dach throws on another, 25, 30 pounds of muscle. He's going to all of a sudden figure out how to finish.
Kirby Dach asked us to go to that tournament where he just did a lollygag hit and then he broke his wrist so weirdly and then it destroyed his development and then he tore his ACL. Then he came back against the Blackhawks and tore his ACL because of a hit in the bench. The hockey gods just said this guy's not making it.
Yeah,
he had the talent, but not the talent for number 3.
You have to pick a guy if you're Kyle Davidson here that the hockey gods love and don't want to smite.
Well, but that's the thing here, Tony. So let me cut you back off again. Is Kyle Davidson is going to learn from that mistake because he was in that front office when Stan Bowman picked Kirby Dach. He understands the magnitude of what this is. But back to my original point of, I think this is for Kyle Davidson kind of a fun place to be because it gives you kind of options in terms of how you want to improve your roster. Right. And where do you want to go? And where do you think you need to, value players? Because if I want a playmaker, it's James Higgins. But if I want a big playmaker, it's probably Porter Martone. Mm-hmm. But if I want the guy with the shot, no matter what he does elsewhere, I don't care if he's a good skater or not, then maybe it is Frondell. And then you can make the same argument. If I want a defensive stalwart, and maybe that is the number 9, and maybe that is a Paterka trade, which I'll be brutally honest with people because I've been asked this on X.
You have been.
GM Ron about a Paterka trade. There have not been trades in the top 10 since like Corey Schneider was shipped to the New Jersey Devils. It's been over a fucking decade. So like, people thinking that teams are just going to willy-nilly trade top 10 picks like it's the NFL draft is a little like I can't get comfortable in saying that's for sure going to happen. So if the Hawks are staying put at 3, it's not going to be a player like Deswanier, right? I hope it's Higgins. Truly, that's the player I want. I think at the end of the day, that's who I want. But I absolutely see the path and the route where it could be either Frondell or Martone as well, depending on what Kyle Davidson wants to get out of this draft at the number 3 spot.
Yeah, if Kyle Davidson says that Desnoyers is Taze, then, and Taze, obviously, like Breezing said, was also 3, then you're going to try to take that guy. But the thing is, where has he been Taze?
I don't see
my question. Game. No. And obviously, yeah, the Porter Martone reminds me of Corey Perry comment. I've seen that a lot recently over the comments. And the thing is, The only thing I would say is Porter Martone plays like a friendly Corey Perry. He doesn't have that like I'm gonna kill you, take your head off.
He doesn't
of
have that
game.
edge.
Yeah, he just doesn't. I wish he did. And also,
See, I don't like
the
that.
Blackhawks
I don't like that.
traded.
You could develop that, but you also have a guy like Merrick
No, you
Vernacker
can't.
already in the system.
You can't develop an edge. You just you have it or you don't.
Agreed.
Like someone
I
would have
don't
to
know.
kill your goldfish for you to do that.
Yeah, like life experience happens to people.
Yeah, but life experiences also happen to a lot of these guys who are already 18 years old.
That's true. But
You either play with an edge
if you look, fair
like
enough.
look at
I
the
think you could
Kachuk
develop
brothers.
that.
Look at the Kachuk brothers. It was in their DNA. Their dad played with an edge. They play with an edge. Not a
So
lot
are
of
you
guys play
saying
with
that everybody who's Ronald? Are you telling me that everybody who compared them to the Kachuk brothers, or at least Matthew Kachuk, even himself, is saying, like, is he devaluing what he has in terms of fire and passion and grit?
I think he plays a heavy game. I don't think he's an agitator though. Like there's nothing that is in.
That's what I mean. You do have an agitator in the system already.
Sure, and that's assuming he even gets to the NHL, because I know who you're referencing.
That's
Savoy?
not Marcel.
No, it's not Marcel.
Savoy. That's an interesting name
Samuel
for an
Savoy.
agitator.
Yeah.
But that's not who I was referencing.
But I think that's the thing here, right? Like, and again, I know if you know what, fuck it. If people are going to throw out the JJ Paterka trade as being a thing, if I'm Kyle Davidson, I'm calling Ottawa right now and I'm asking, what does Brady Tkachuk cost? And if the 3 pick is in it, great, send it. You know what? I'll send it with a basket of edible arrangements as well to Ottawa, because like that to me, I agreed. Again, going back to what you said, Anthony, at the top of this episode, this is such a weird class. To me, the Blackhawks can't get the number one thing that they need, and that's that shit stirrer. They don't have that. And if you want another hot take, because I saw it a little bit earlier here, Stolet was already talking about some free agency shit here, saying that they need to get Nikolai Ehlers from the Jets. Fuck Nikolai Ehlers. They need to get Sam Bennett from the Florida Panthers. Because that's the thing they are missing. And again, if that's the thing they want, and Martone thinks he can be that, and maybe in the interviews, because again, this is a guy you've talked to, Anthony. If that's a guy, if he sits there in the interviews and goes, I can become Matthew Tkachuk, then if I'm Kyle Davidson, I'm sitting there, I'm stroking that, that 5 o'clock shadow as I'm watching his film going, I mean, if he can get down and dirty and nasty, and he's going to set up Connor Bedard the way he sets up his teammates in Brampton, maybe that's the guy you need to take. Because again, I think it's just such a fascinating class, because it's what does Kyle Davidson want out of this draft class at number 3? And maybe this is a good way to stir to my last question that we had for the show and incorporate that into the general conversation of what could the Blackhawks do at 25? Could they get some of that grit and that nasty at 25 in a player that, again, like you compared it to the NFL draft where that, 20 to 60 or, 15 to 60 range is a lot of the same players, or even 15 to 40 range is a lot of the same players. Can you get 2 of those guys at 25 and 34 that maybe can do that for you, and then you can go more the James Hagen's route, or you can go more of the Anton Frundell route and take a shot on a guy who's got a really high upside at one thing or 2 things that they do well?
I love this question. I could talk about it for probably 2 hours. I like the 25th pick a lot, and I also like the 34th pick. So I'll give you a freebie. I'll charge you after. But okay, so Václav Destersil at the 25th pick is awesome. He's one of my favorite players, 6'5", Muskegon Lumberjacks. You had a player like Ivan Ryabkin, who was his teammate in the USHL there, and he outplayed him. Obviously, I like Ivan Ryabkin too, but I don't think that he's more high upside. I think it has to be upside, but I also think there needs to be at least a top 9 floor. Braden Coots, if he falls, he's ranked around 19, 20. This guy plays with consistency. 6 foot center out of Seattle Thunderbirds, played really well in the WHL, but he's very consistent. This guy went to Chipotle every single day buying double protein. He's going to be a muscle man. I think that this guy is very skilled. I think he would be perfect on our third line. We have a lot of third line players, but if he hits, he could be a second liner. I think that Carter Bear would be a trade up option, a package that 25th and 34th picks, because you need a guy like Carter Bear. His player comp is Brandon Hagel. But the thing about Brandon Hagel is that he just didn't have the entire hard skill in the box at his age that Carter Bear does. Obviously, the lacerated Achilles is tough. I talked to him. He said that the injury is a lot better. He's already skating, and he might be participating in some of the summer activities, so he dodged a bullet there. Obviously, a guy like Lyndon Lakovich is 6'4". I call him my Becca Seneca of the entire class because he was a lot smaller than 6'4", and he grew, I think, 4 or 5 inches. Moose Jaw Warriors had a terrible season this year, but they actually won the WHL championship last year. Malcolm Spence is a player that I really like. His player comp for himself is Carter Verhaeghe, playing for Michigan next year, and I love Michigan. You saw what it did with Frank Nazar, even though he only played for a couple games, and you saw what it did for Michael Hage. I really like that pick. I would also go with a player like Logan Hensler. I think we need another right-handed defenseman just in the prospect pool, not because you're going to play him in the next couple years, but I think right-handed defensemen or defensemen aren't your average Levshunov. They take 2 to 3 years. So if you get this guy and he ends up being a lot better right-handed defenseman, he's your third pair right-handed defenseman that could be a top 4 right-handed defenseman. And you have him on a entry-level deal when you're already paying Vlasic, Sam Rinzel, and Levshunov. I really like that idea. There's multiple players that I like in this range. Like Bill Zonin, I got to talk to. He was a chess champion in 4th grade. This guy is he was the third best player in the queue. I think that overall he'd be a third line winger, but the thing is, it's not because of his talent. He should be a second line winger, but we just have so many prospects in this pool. Shane Van Sage is a great playoff player. Right now is when a lot of players or a lot of people in the scouting community are only thinking playoff players. It's usually regular season until the playoffs hit. This guy was 207. He's basically a Brady Martin light, even though Brady Martin's 30 pounds lighter. It's just he brings the punch. 6'2", 216 pounds. I just think that there's so much to work with there. I'm a really big fan of Milton Gastrin, who his team actually got relegated in his league in Sweden. Very tough season, but he put them on his back. He's a leader for the Swedish team. I think that he would be good. If you're looking at a player that could be the next Alex DeBrincat, Cameron Schmidt is one of those guys. He's 5'7", but he's probably his top 10 skill in the entire class. There's just Jack Nesbitt, 6'4" center. I think that he would be a good option. And I'm a huge fan of 2 USNTDP kids. One is Cole McKinney, who I had in my top 20 in summer scouting, as well as William Moore, who I also had as top 20. They had very good second halves of the season. They started out, they kind of had like a James Haggins type of year, but they really played well in the back half of the year. So I think the Blackhawks are going to have incredible options at 25. Cole Rezny is somebody that actually was on par with Gavin McKenna's numbers in the WHL for the playoffs. He was incredible. No one helped out his stock more than Rezny in the last 2 months. But I think there's just so many good players. I'm going to talk to Benjamin Kindell from the Calgary Hitmen. I've heard raving reviews over this kid. So also a player for the 3rd round that I just want to throw in there that's also going to the University of Minnesota and the Golden Gophers, or the Dallas Stars pick in the 2nd round, because we don't know where that's going to be, but it's probably going to be 59 because they're going to lose, is Jacob Rombach. He is incredible defensively. He's a towering defenseman. He's going with Maceo Phillips to Minnesota, and we love our Golden Gophers out there, so I think that would be really cool to pick him, and he's a huge Blackhawks fan. He grew up a Blackhawks fan. He actually knew a lot of the content creators for the Blackhawks. Like, very, very cool kid. He's just a fan too, so he likes a lot of what people in Chicago like. He's going to be someone that hits hard. I think he's a Matt Rempe waiting to happen with a little more offensive skill.
And that would be fun. I mean, a defenseman at 6'6", almost 200 pounds already as an 18-year-old is hard to pass up. And again, coming from the USHL, I think the USHL, another severely underappreciated development league, when it's all said and done, product of Lincoln, of course. But we've seen what like a Sasha Boisvert has turned into as a product
and
of USHL.
Totally agree with you. I saw a comment in there, and it was one of my favorite players in the third round, late second round, and it was Prokhorov. I love this kid. Absolutely incredible. 6'5" winger. You got to take your chance on this guy. He's somebody that could hit, and if he hits, he's going to be first, second liner. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it's the entire NHL draft. These guys are 17, 18, 19 years old. You just have to take highest upside. Also, a player that I really love. I love his entire family, and I love how he plays. He practices with Matthew Schaefer in the summers, Michael Misa, Michael Hage, Quentin Musty. They've known this guy for years. His dad runs the ice. It's Jack Ivankovich. I think that he said his player comp was UC Saros, 5'11". His dad was 6'5", a goaltender. This kid is not done growing. I'm sure of that. He is not done growing. If this kid becomes 6'2", 6'3", he might be the steal of the draft. He's projected to be a 40, 45 overall pick. And at a 5'11" goalie, if you're already ranked 45, there's a reason. This guy is cool, calm, and collective. Probably one of the best goalies, pure goalies I've seen in a long time. So I really love him. He also talked about Spencer Knight as one of the people that he talked about. If he grows to 6'1", 6'2", this guy could be a star.
You just perked Tony up. Tony is our resident goalie guy.
Say his name again for me like 3 or 4 more times, just so I can let this permeate.
Jack Ivankovich. It was
Jack
Matthew
Ivankovich.
Schaefer.
All right.
Yep, Matthew Schaefer said it was the best player he's ever played against. They shut him out during the teddy bear toss, and he had like 4 straight shutouts, so they had to throw the teddy bears on the ice with 2 minutes left because they knew they weren't going to score. And the thing is, I'm mad at Matthew Schaefer because he's told me his name wrong. So on every single podcast, I was like Ivankovich, and that's because Matthew Schaefer told me it was wrong. So all those people in the comments saying I said his name wrong, it was Matthew Schaefer's fault. I never actually said that, but Matthew Schaefer, he totally did that to me. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but that guy was hilarious. Me and him laughed a ton. But Matthew Schaefer knows 0 lyrics when he's singing songs, so I want to throw him under the bus for that.
Let him know. Let him know.
As soon as I heard the goalie talk, I started to get really interested in what you were talking about. I had a question lined up before you started getting into the goalie thing. But I'm going to ask it anyway. It's going to kind of shift gears here. Now, Ron knows this. I'm a big fan of the Blackhawks, even if it's 6th round, whatever. You got to take the best name in the draft. Marcel is my favorite draft pick of all times. Might never make it to the NHL. Doesn't matter. You know all of these names that are in here. What's the best name in this draft?
That's a really tough question. I've actually never been asked that question. Oh my God.
You got to go really find a hockey name or like a food name, like John Mustard.
John Mustard. My friends, one of my best friends' favorite names is actually Marcel. I have one, but I don't think I can. I'm not gonna go that one. This is a really good question.
How do we say the Swedish junior goalie? Is it Måns Goose?
Måns Goose.
That's a pretty electric name.
I was watching a video that I was editing today because there was a moment in it which I totally forgot because I was going to the Chicago Fire Messi game and I was in a rush because I was late, and it was Löv Harmstam, and for 3 minutes he went over with me how to say his name because he's like, you're saying it wrong, and I was just cracking up with him the entire time because he was like, you say it like a girl. I was like, and I was like, no, because I said it with an A. So I really like Löv Harmstam. I cannot say it. There's something weird with it, but it's not Louvet or love.
I'm great at pronunciations, Anthony. It's my specialty here.
Well, it's Löv Harmstam. The thing with the SHL is when I watch it on Instat, I don't watch it with the volume. I blast like Juice World or some other rapper or something, and I just like get in, and so next year when I'm doing the scouting, I am actually going to play, because sometimes they have the announcers and sometimes it's just ice and it's super loud. So I'm not going to wear headphones. So I'm honestly just watching with my music in. And I feel like that hurt me with the pronunciations, and I'm never doing that again because I have no idea how to say love Herenstam, and it's so bad.
So it's Louvre Harenstam.
Louvre Harenstam.
Ron is the official play-by-play
Because
announcer. Ron does a lot of play-by-play, so he's gonna figure this.
That's
one
awesome.
out.
I have found his hockey elite prospects page, and I am convinced now that I'm going to figure out how to pronounce his name. So that is now on my to-do list. So I appreciate that little.
Before the end of the show, Ron, you need to figure out how to.
Well, if it's Louvre and not love, that makes sense. But in Swedish,
Louvre, yeah.
the little double dots over the A is like, I think it's like a har, like a ha versus like a huh. Because Americans are ignorant and we say stupid shit. So I think Louvre Harenstam, I think is Harenstam. See, the problem is we don't have the beautiful Scandinavian dialect where they can just kind of like blend all those sounds together. In the English language, it doesn't work that way.
But Marcel's an incredible name. I am very happy you said that, because that's the best name. If he comes to the Blackhawks, and I want his jersey, and
same here.
And I want to ask him a question. When you do your signature, is it just Marcel? Like, do you do it twice, or is it?
I would do Marcel squared if I was him.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Anthony, that might be a good question to throw out into your Twitterverse, because I'm sure you have fans that are diehard Rockford Ice Hog fans who may have gotten a Marcel autograph, and you probably answered that question.
All right. I'll ask him. I'll ask that tomorrow for sure.
You'll have to throw that one out there for sure.
That's awesome. That's really good.
There's so many good ones. I'll tell you what, I mean, this has been an incredible hour 16 of prospect talk, and I'm sure we could go for another 2 or 3 hours.
Plus the hour that we were on just chilling.
Plus the pre-hour that we took to get on to everything. But Anthony, I want to turn it over quickly to you here, for some final thoughts, kind of, whatever you got cooking in the kitchen, whatever is on your horizon. And again, just remind everybody where they can find you and all your good stuff.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on. It was great talking to all of you guys. You are awesome. I'd love to have beers with you guys out on a bar and just watch some Hawks playoff hockey, hopefully too. We are in the start of what I think is going to be a very long playoff tenure, so this is a great place to start. But I think that what I'm going to be doing is the combine. I'm going to be posting a lot of my clips on YouTube at the Prospect Dawn. I have a special guest coming on tomorrow, if you guys want to subscribe over there, which is Matt Merles from Spinning Chicklets and Barstool the Universe. He does game notes. Very good friends with Biz, and his head coach was Sidney Crosby, and his former teammate was Mario Lemieux. He actually was roommates with Sidney Crosby for a little bit. It was an incredible interview, incredible experience. Tomorrow, I'm going to be interviewing a 2-time Stanley Cup champion from the Blackhawks, 2013 run, and then a 2015 run. So I think that's going to be really cool. I'm going to be posting that on my YouTube and clips on my X. Obviously, if you're watching on X, it's the Prospect Dawn, but TikTok, I'm growing on there. I went from like 5 followers to 36 yesterday. So that was cool because I just downloaded it. I have a Discord that I just opened up today. Obviously that's just talking hockey. People were asking about where I'm going to post my clips, so I'll probably post them there first, as well as my Instagram, but obviously I don't really use that, but it's just X and YouTube right now, and then growing on TikTok. So the community is Prospect Dawn. We have about 350 people. I created that like 3 weeks ago, so it's incredible that 350 people are already in there. It's completely free. We just talk Blackhawks and just random things. So things are really moving quick. I'm doing a lot of collabs with a lot of great people, and it's been a really fun ride.
Hell yeah, man.
Hey Don, before you get out of here,
sure.
I love asking this question to other people.
Ask as many as you guys want.
In the content creation space, what got you into this? What started this drive for you? Because I've I started watching, your Twitter account. We're big on X, Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, whatever. But like you've had a really great rise. What got you into this, and what was like the motivating factor that started the prospect on? I think that's a really cool story to share. So
Yeah.
airways are yours.
So many people in the comments might not believe me, but I started 11 weeks ago, and I don't know what I was doing. I was just like, I want to do this. I had already interviewed a bunch of prospects like Matthew Schaefer and Porter Martone, but I was only posting exclusively for Draft Pros. And I felt like I always wanted to be on camera talking to people, talking about this. I saw Charlie Rilmeliotis and, Ben Pope's tweets and all that stuff and how they were on TV and Boyle and all these guys growing up. And I was just like, I can do that. I feel that I have the confidence level of talking sports because I grew up talking sports and Blackhawks. And I was always talking to my friends about random prospects. And they're like, Anthony, we do not care. So please just create something so that you're talking to people that actually care about this stuff. Because I was going to like 3rd round draft picks. Like, we have to take this guy. And they're like, who the heck is John Mustard? Not like Jack Pridham or whatever. I was just talking about these guys. So I was like, maybe I just start posting. The algorithm liked me a lot. I think people started trying to collab with me based on my interviews and stuff. And then I got more confidence. The media credentials came out of nowhere, honestly. I've been getting really good advice and collabing with the right people. I think that that's really the key. The key is if you're doing this or want to go into sports creation, I think that you should just rip it off like a Band-Aid and do it. Obviously, take the steps that you need to take smaller steps. But if that's just audio first, audio videos, trying to figure out how to do a thumbnail, I think that that's really important. Mr. Beast basically gives you the guideline of how to be successful. Shorts, in my opinion, are the best way to do that. You clip your videos with shorts, you get them to your other videos. I think that it's just all about growing and getting better. I did not think, even going into December of last year, that I was ever going to be in this position. And now that I am, I'm working, 15, 16 hours a day on content until the draft, just trying to get everything out. And I've been blessed with this opportunity. So I'm just going to keep going. I just love talking hockey. I think I don't want to be timid or like somebody that is just knows a lot about hockey, but you can't have a beer with. I'm just a regular guy that's talking prospects with a bunch of other regular guys. And I think it's really fun if you have that outlook.
Hey man, I fucking love that. That's an excellent answer. And I think there's a lot out there for people to unpack from that, because it's not an easy thing to do. And what you've done is admirable, and it's really awesome. So I appreciate that answer. I love having that conversation with people, especially, the stuff we've done here over the past couple of years. And just seeing someone explode onto the scene the way that you have is really, really sweet. So I've enjoyed having you on this episode. All of the different knowledge bits that you dropped, the way that I knew that you were going to hit it off with Ron based on the hour-long conversation we had before we even got on here. I don't hold a PhD in salary cap geography, but I will say you hold a PhD in prospecting as well. So
Thank you.
Excellent to have you on here. That was my final question. I'll turn it back over to Ron so we can shut this thing down.
Yeah, absolutely. This is awesome, Anthony. We'll have to have you back on, especially before the season starts, and we'll certainly be in contact with you. It's always great to make new friends of the show, and I think this was a great episode in order to do that with this group as well. As always, we want to encourage everybody not only to follow our friend here, Anthony, at the Prospect Don, but be sure to follow us as well at Four Feathers Pod. Like, subscribe, and review. You know the drill, and we appreciate all the listens and love and support. Head over to the YouTube channel at OnTap Sportsnet. Like, subscribe, hit that little bell button in the corner. You know when all of our great shows go live, because it's not just hockey here at OnTap Sports Network. We've got it all. We've got the Bears, we've got the Bulls, we've got golf, we've got soccer, you name it. And of course, we have both teams on the side of town when it comes to baseball. Anthony and I are bonding over being Cubs fans. These two losers here root for the White Sox. Neither here nor there. We got it both covered. Cubs on tap, Sox on tap. You can check that all out at ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTap Sportsnet on the socials, because OnTap Sports Network is where you can check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. The puppy makes an appearance. Anthony, this was an awesome show. We appreciate you joining us. We can't wait to collaborate with you again in the near future. Enjoy the combine. We can't wait to see your content from that. And I'm sure we'll all be in touch with you in discussions of what that experience was like when it's all said and done. But without further ado, gentlemen, what do you guys say? Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks. Thank you guys so much.